Welcome to the Insights Capsule. The company featured for this edition is Qualcomm. Let me start with a brief introduction on the Insights Capsule. The Insights Capsule is a recent addition to my long-standing monthly business e-newsletter, which has got a special focus on Asia Pacific. This newsletter is called Semiconductor Business Insight. For the Insights Capsule, I pick up a semiconductor company in each edition and I share some interesting data sets. These data sets they span from investments made, adjacencies ventured, some interesting news snippets on mergers and acquisitions and others. Basically, these data sets are structured from some publicly available information. These data sets, along with some other information as well as primary research, help me to develop some insights which help me further into developing some market intelligence reports, which are some of my commercial offerings in my company VLSI Consultancy's services portfolio. So let's start on the Qualcomm datasets. Following the smart money, the corporate venture capital arm of Qualcomm is called Qualcomm Ventures. Qualcomm Venture funds wireless innovation. So most of the investment areas under that fall into spaces like the virtual reality, augmented reality, IoT, robotics, cloud, wireless health. And the sectors span from system and components, hardware, healthcare, enterprise, etc. This particular slide shows some of the startups into which Qualcomm Venture Capital has invested into. So if we look into the technologies behind these startups, it gives us some sort of an indication into the strategic direction of Qualcomm. So when we look at some of these technologies, these include virtual reality, augmented reality. It also goes into the automotive sector, especially in the autonomous vehicle space. We have cruise automation there, which was the startup which was acquired by General Motors early this year for a whopping, I think, around $1 billion. The other technologies for the startups have flash memory, wafer bumping, millimeter wave radio. Under the drones or the technologies facilitating the drone development, we have aerial photography, audio imaging, wireless communications, satellite internet, 3D technology capture and output, etc. And also into the agriculture big data. It is also big into the robotics. And in fact, Qualcomm Venture Capital had been one of the most active venture capital investing in the logistics and the supply chain space. Qualcomm Venture Capital also is big in the data center solution sector investments, as well as into big data analytics. So this particular slide shows us a kind of a snapshot into some of these technologies. Moving on towards the market and the adjacencies, Qualcomm had been leading in the smartphone area, smartphone and the mobile computing space. But now that space it's getting saturated. So Qualcomm has started seeking new growth areas as it faces a lot of competition in its core modem and the microprocessor business. And for its technology roadmap, it is expanding into the spaces and pursuing new opportunities in areas where it can build up or leverage on its core technologies and capabilities. And some of the areas or these adjacent opportunities which are there, they include areas like automotive, networking, mobile computing, etc. And the focus area include AR, VR, drones, robotics, and 5G and the wireless broadband. Especially the 5G and the wireless broadband is a space in which Qualcomm seeks some leadership. Delving a little bit further onto the drones AR, VR robotics space, Qualcomm came up with a Snapdragon 821, which is used to power the mobile virtual reality head-mounted displays. And in September this year, just a few months back, it introduced its Snapdragon VR 820. This was done in partnership with a Chinese company called Gotek, and it is actually a virtual reality all in one platform. It is something very similar to Intel's Project Alloy. In addition, Qualcomm has been working with Google for the last year and a half to two to make its products ready for Google's augmented reality technology. And Google has an AR project which is called the AR Project Tango. So Qualcomm has been working with Google on that. In addition, Qualcomm in March this year started a joint venture with another Chinese company called the Thunder Software Technologies. This joint venture is called Thundercom, and it delves into the technologies for the drones, VR, wearables, robots, etc. In a recent CB Insights news item, it was noted that Qualcomm Ventures was the most active corporate investor since 2012 in the supply chain and the logistics startups. So it has been in startups like Mandate Technologies, which is into e-commerce delivery, Flirty, drone delivery, Logi, curbside, e-commerce pickup service, etc. And last year, Qualcomm Ventures, in fact, launched a $1 million Qualcomm Robotics Accelerator program, which was powered by a technology accelerator called Techstars. And in fact, there were, I think, 10 companies which were chosen in this particular program. Automotive is another space in which Qualcomm is very keen to be leading player, and it addresses the infotainment and the connectivity space within this sector. And one of the interesting acquisition news in this space is NXP acquisition by Qualcomm. And with this, Qualcomm uh, gets into the NXP's clients and product portfolio, the technology portfolio here. In the automotive space, Qualcomm is competing with NVIDIA, Intel, and the likes. NVIDIA has a platform called the Drive PX. The Drive PX actually is a turnkey platform for the autonomous vehicles, and it is being tested by Daimler, Ford, BMW, and Freescale, which was acquired by NXP and now is going to be under Qualcomm, has a competing product called Blue Box. So Qualcomm can now compete with NVIDIA's Drive PX in that space. And to NVIDIA's Tegra, Qualcomm has its Snapdragon, which is customized for the automotive segment also. In fact, in January this year, Qualcomm came up with its first automotive chipset, the Snapdragon 602A, design win in Audi. Connected health is a very interesting space in which Qualcomm has been working in for the last decade and a half or a couple of decades. And Qualcomm has been the largest has been the largest corporate investor in the digital health since 2014. Now, digital technology has been transforming healthcare on a big scale. And Qualcomm has its own terminology for the Internet of Things in the medical area, and it calls it as the IoMT, Internet of Medical Things. And it has its platform, the TrueNet and the Capsule platforms here. Qualcomm, in fact, has been developing its wireless health strategy for almost a decade and two. It has been grooming health startups, supporting a number of major mobile health events, co-founding various wireless health industry associations, and lobbying the policymakers on the various important relevant issues. And in December 2011, Qualcomm launched Qualcomm Life, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Qualcomm, which focuses on wireless health. It launched its first product, TrueNet, and TrueNet is actually a cloud-based end-to-end connectivity platform. And then we have Capsule Technologies, which was acquired by Qualcomm Life in September last year. Capsule Technologies is a leading provider of medical device integration and clinical data management solutions. Early this year, Qualcomm was rumored to have a $1 billion technology joint venture with GSK. And in May, it teamed up with Philips. In May, it teamed up with Medtronics. And with Philips in August this year, it teamed up on the personalized connected healthcare. In fact, Qualcomm has been partnering or collaborating with a number of pharmaceutical companies. And so the pharmaceutical companies and companies like Qualcomm leverage on the digital technologies and the vertical domain know-how of which is acquired, which is there by the pharmaceutical companies, to kind of be the leaders in the digital health. And in January 2016, early this year, Qualcomm Life entered into a partnership with Novartis to develop the next generation of Novartis Breathaler inhaler, which is actually a connected inhaler, which is used to address the COPD. And going on Novartis, it has last January, in fact, it formed a $100 million joint investment company with Novartis on its Beyond the Pill focus. In fact, Novartis has this Global Trials of the Future program, and Qualcomm Life is working very closely with Novartis on that. Qualcomm and Roche have also formed an alliance for remote patient monitoring. So there are a lot of things which are moving on in the connected health, and Qualcomm is pretty entrenched into the space with the subsidiary Qualcomm Life. A few things in addition. Qualcomm, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, it seeks the wireless broadband leadership. Qualcomm believes that the ability to drive the gigabit LTE with 4G using advanced and other techniques would be key to the 5G transition. And another space here is on the RF front end modules and the RF filters for the IoT. And in this space, Qualcomm established in January this year, it established a $3 billion joint venture with a Japanese company called TDK. This joint venture is called RF360 Holdings, and it is based here in Singapore. And it focuses on the RF front end modules and the RF filters, which is a pretty hot trend now, with the major drivers being the multiple carrier aggregation and the growth of cellular within IoT. And again in Jan, Qualcomm formed a joint venture, a $280 million joint venture with the Guizhou province in China to design and sell server chipsets in China. On the assembly front, Qualcomm and SJ Semi. SJ Semi is a joint venture between SMIC and JCET. In July this year, the two announced the mass production of 14 nanometer wafer bumping. And just a couple of months back, Qualcomm opened its Qualcomm Communication Technology in Shanghai along with Amkor. And this is a semiconductor test facility. So from a fabless provider, it has gone into a very kind of a close collaboration with the foundries as well as into wafer bumping, just to have a kind of a more control over the supply chain without actually entering much into the foundry space. Now, speaking about there was a lot of speaking about the foundries, there was a lot of speculation about Qualcomm entering into an IDM space or also trying to own a fab when there was a capacity problem and Qualcomm had the orders, but it could not fulfill the demands because it could not get the required foundry capacity. This was quite a few years back because I think TSMC did not have that requisite foundry capacity for it. And there was a lot of speculation about Samsung going into the foundry way and acquiring a fab or something like that. So now with the NXP acquisition, Qualcomm would actually have access to the foundry and the process technology, which could help in its roadmap further. One of the very interesting spaces into which Qualcomm has also delved is cognitive computing. Now, cognitive computing is making a lot of inroads. All these talks and the work which is being done in machine learning, a number of sectors are leveraging the machine learning, like automotive, smartphones, cameras, drones, health, and medical. And Qualcomm has Leveraging its leadership in the smartphone and the mobile computing devices, it is kind of morphing it to expand further growth opportunities. So it has this concept of turning your, let's say, your smartphone into what they call it as a cognitive companion. So the smartphone would learn your habits, it would learn the habits of the user over a period of time. It would learn how the user interacts with the environment, and it kind of takes over those activities and it interacts on your behalf with the rest of the environment. So it becomes what they term it as a cognitive companion. And for this, you need a lot of pattern recognition, image recognition, etc. So, places where concepts of neuromorphic computing or computing which kind of mimics the behavior of your brain, that comes in very important. And to this end, Qualcomm has one major program which is called the Zeroth program, under which it has developed a digital neuromorphic chip, and this it had demoed it in a robot. In addition, Qualcomm Ventures has invested into a company called BrainCorp, which has developed the Brain OS, which it calls as the operating system for the robots. And as far as the computing is concerned, we would have this cognitive computing being done on various devices. It could be done at the server end, sitting on the, let's say, for example, in the data center space. It could be done on the edge devices, so the edge computing, or it could also be done on the device itself. So, especially in areas where, let's say, there is a connectivity problem or there is a bandwidth problem, or where you have a very low latency time is the requirement, you need to have an on device machine learning. And Qualcomm is like working in all these areas just to pursue all these new growing opportunities in this new spaces. So that was a kind of a brief snapshot on some of the data sets for as far as Qualcomm is concerned. If you're interested to know more about such data sets or would like to find out some more information or explore how VLSI consultancy can address your your pain points with this market intelligence or business data, do feel free to send me an email. Just to help you with that, my profile snapshot is put out here, along with a couple of a few proof points regarding my skill set. And this is my contact information. You can reach me at Meenu at asic-vlsi.com, and my blog, LinkedIn, Twitter, and all my social media contact databases out here. I hope you found this brief snippet interesting and useful, and I do look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.